Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I'm Mark Givler, joined as always by Chip Minnick. Another interesting weekend of college football behind us. Lots to talk about in the Big Ten right now. A lot of teams in what I would call fringe playoff range right now who need some help or need to keep winning. Aren't in today, won't be in, when the first playoff rankings are released here Tuesday evening, but are still very much alive. And then we've got some other teams that probably saw their chances take a really big, if not fatal hit over the weekend. Some questions, about some of the top teams in the league and what we can expect here moving forward. But first of all, let's talk about kind of the first thing I want to get into is teams that maybe got eliminated on Saturday. And unfortunately, you got to talk about Nebraska here. Dylan Raiola suffers an injury. They can't overcome the USC game. They can't pull that USC game out. Maybe in hindsight, it doesn't matter now with the Raiola injury, but I think probably Nebraska sees their playoff hopes come to an end. Chip, just your thoughts on that. And the Raiola injury is kind of just, we'll say, like the cherry on top of a really disappointing weekend for the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, I genuinely feel bad for Dylan Raiola. I mean, injuries are just part of the game, but I mean, you never want to see them, especially season-ending injuries. So, best wishes to Dylan Raiola for speedy recovery and coming back next year stronger and better. And for Nebraska fans, I know this has to be extremely disappointing because they have their bowl eligibility, but even Matt Rule last year said, "Hey, this is not kind of where we want this program to be. We want to be better than 6 wins, and it's still possible. I don't want to put a plateau or a ceiling on Nebraska, but everything has to change now with TJ Lateef is going to be the presumed starter at quarterback, which means offensively that's not to imply that he's not capable of running the offense, but it's going to look different. You don't know how that's going to result on the field. So for Nebraska, I think going out and competing and trying to win the remaining games on the schedule is certainly something that they could do. But I would think getting to the college football playoff right now, they're 6-3. I think it would be a long shot at best.
Yeah. Nothing that happened this weekend changed my belief that we are going to see a 9-3 team get in. The SEC continues to kind of beat each other up in the middle of that conference. Vanderbilt takes a loss to Texas, which only makes the picture even more cloudy in the SEC. Oklahoma, Tennessee play their game, and now Tennessee's got 3 losses, and they've got a tough schedule down the stretch still. So teams are kind of muddying up that middle of the rankings type of area. And gosh, if you want the ACC to get more than one team in the college football playoff, you did not like the results on Saturday. Georgia Tech takes a bad loss to NC State. Miami takes a bad loss to SMU. I still don't think Virginia is going to continue. I think like Duke is going to get Virginia, and then Virginia, even with 2 losses, is going to be an impossible argument for the college football playoff, in my opinion. There's a lot going on, which, again, if you're a 3-loss Big Ten or SEC team with some quality wins under your belt, you've got to be thinking to yourself, there's still a chance here. But Nebraska's, I don't know that they've got the quality, the resume, even if they could win out. I think it's going to be tough to win out anyway without Raiola, but it's going to be interesting. That kind of brings us to Illinois. Does Illinois still have a chance? They're kind of just outside the top 25 right now. They're in really good shape to win out and go 9-3. The losses on their schedule are all to good teams, but they also don't have like the great wins, although we are living in a world where Duke playing in the ACC championship game, which would obviously give Duke a chance to punch a ticket to the college football playoff, is not a far-fetched thing. If Duke beats Virginia, and I think that's in 2 weeks, I'm trying to remember. If Duke beats Virginia, Duke is in amazing shape in the ACC, if other things continue to play out the way they are with these teams beating each other up, and Illinois has like a 26-point road win against Duke. And so when you get down to it, and if you've got a 10-2 Virginia and a 9-3 Illinois, and Virginia's not playing in the ACC championship game, and Virginia loses to Duke, what are we doing here? Why would we ever be arguing for Virginia over Illinois? So, like, I don't know. There's some things out there that would keep some of these 3-loss teams in it. But, like, for now, let's get into, like, some of these 2-loss teams. So Washington makes an appearance in the AP poll, thankfully, number 24. Iowa makes an appearance in the coaches poll, thankfully, number 24. They're both 26 in the other one. So they're in one poll, Washington's 24 and Iowa's 26. In the other polls, Iowa's 24, Washington's 26. These teams have to be thinking, if they win their last remaining games, they're going to be in the playoff, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think the national media has been slow to come around on both Iowa and Washington. It's going to be interesting to see for both of them, in fairness, that their remaining schedules, respectively, for the Hawkeyes as well as the Huskies, it's going to be challenging for them to win out, but it's not impossible. And as you said, it's the kind of thing where within the ACC, it's just kind of, who's surviving this. You were right. One of the things, as you were discussing, the Duke Virginia game is in a couple weeks, and I think that Duke win is something that, right now Duke is overall, they're 5-3, but they're 4-1 within the ACC. They could win the remaining games, get to that ACC championship. So I would think, if we're going to use any kind of strength of schedule or quality win metric, or however you want to phrase it, I think it can only boost Illinois. Illinois has as good a shot as any to win out the remaining games and be there, standing there, probably at, like in the bottom tier of those, okay, well, 11-12, so to speak. All right, you're going to get in, I don't want to say by the skin of your teeth, but you're not necessarily getting in, because the losses, the substantial loss at Indiana, the loss to Ohio State kind of looms. But if they can win out and be 9-3 and have that if Duke wins out, I think they'll be fine. Getting back to your point, though, about Iowa and Washington, it's going to be tough. The remaining games on both their schedules, I see it very difficult for them to be able to be sitting there at the end of the year and not have more than 3 losses. But we'll see.
They both have to play Oregon.
Yes.
Iowa and Washington. Iowa gets Oregon at home this weekend. We're going to talk about that game a lot on Thursday. The spread on that, spoiler alert, a little low, looks a little scary if you're an Oregon fan. Tough place to play, Kinnick. We'll see what happens there, but we'll get into that later. But yes, Iowa, Washington both have Oregon looming. I think Iowa's got USC as well.
Yes,
like they go out to USC, Oregon
Correct.
at home, Washington's at Oregon at the end of the year. So there's plenty of hurdles there. USC stays alive. I think they're 20th right now.
Yes,
2020. Yeah. So USC very much in the picture. They've got to play Iowa. They've got to play Oregon, right? They still have Oregon, I believe,
and UCLA.
Let's
not ignore that. I realize that UCLA is not a playoff team, and but UCLA, I just think that they played USC tough last year, and that was before all of the turmoil. Who's to say what UCLA is going to do this remaining month? But I just think that when it comes to the USC, it's a pride thing. It's a rivalry game that goes far beyond any kind of conference affiliation. I think that UCLA certainly has it within them to want to spoil USC's season if it's within their capacity.
It's funny. We're sitting here talking about, like, can Iowa win out? Can Washington win out? Can USC win out? And how difficult that's going to be. All I've gathered from our conversation the last 5 minutes here is how difficult it may be for Oregon to win out. They've got to play Iowa, USC, and Washington. They've got to play 3 desperate teams who have a shot at the playoff. Oregon can take another loss in my mind and still get in at 10-2. And if they take another loss, they're not going to go to the Big Ten championship game. They're kind of outside looking in anyway on the Big Ten championship game. But a 10-2 Oregon, no Big Ten championship game, I think is safe. But maybe they take, they're going to take one for the team here and lose one of these games and get another team in and get they're in. They get someone else in by losing to them, whether it's Iowa or Washington or USC. There's everyone helping each other, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, now that you mention it, the fact that, okay, so they're at Iowa, and I don't have the point spread in front of me, but I take you at your word that
it was like 5 or 6. It was not a lot.
Iowa is, and when it's in Kinnick, and especially in November, I keep going back to it, that it's a dangerous place. I don't know what it is, what kind of magic spell, potion, voodoo, whatever kind of. I'm saying this with all sincerity, Iowa fans. It's like so many teams have gone into Kinnick that they were undefeated, and they thought, okay, we know it'll be a good game, and the next thing you know, I mean, Iowa wins just in the last few seconds on a field goal, something like that. And all of a sudden that other team, now that's the beauty of the multi-team playoff now, is that, okay, that other team's season isn't ruined. But the fact that Oregon, they're making that trek, it's going to be an afternoon game. Like you said, Mark, we'll talk about it in greater detail later this week. Oregon, they get to host Minnesota, and that's a team that, I mean, you try and figure them out. Good luck. USC, they host them. But then they have to go on the road to Washington, and that's a rivalry game. So, like you said, if I had to guess, if there was a team that they could lose to, not that they want to, but if they could lose to, would possibly be that rivalry game at the end of the season on the road, and not have it hurt them as much as the other three that I mentioned a moment ago.
Yeah, and it gets back to the Illinois conversation we just had, which is, I'll use a golf analogy here, is they always tell you, like, when you're kind of in the back of the pack on Sunday in a golf tournament, they say just post a score. Get in the clubhouse, post a score, put something in the minds of the players who are still out on the course that they've got to get to. And if you're Illinois, just get to 9-3. Just post your score at 9-3. Let all this chaos play out everywhere else across the country, where all these 1-2 loss teams are almost certainly going to take another loss. And you don't have to play your conference championship games. You can just kind of sit there at 9-3 and let everything else kind of fall apart around you and see what happens. And I would put forth a similar argument to some of these other 3-loss Big Ten and SEC teams specifically, of like, let's see. BYU's out there undefeated right now. BYU's got to play Texas Tech and Cincinnati the next couple weeks. If BYU loses those games, doesn't even get into the Big 12 championship, or we're going to put a 10-2 non-Big 12 champion BYU in the playoff over a team from the Big Ten or the SEC. I'm not convinced that will happen. So the ACC is continuing to play itself into a one-bid league at this rate. The Big 12 is still very murky. Just, if you're Tennessee in the SEC, if you're Illinois in the Big Ten, just try and post a score and see what happens. Purdue, they did it again. So same conversation every Monday is, great job. You guys are playing above your talent level. You're really making teams work for it, but not able to finish, obviously. Michigan had some guys out. Like, how concerning is that game for Michigan that they just played? Again, there's injuries there, but you're at home at night against Purdue. You're 3-touchdown favorites. That game was way tighter than I think a lot of people thought it would be. It just continues my theory that I don't understand this Michigan team. I can't really figure them out.
Yeah, I would be concerned if I was Michigan. I think Michigan has a pretty good, but it's not by any means easy path to the college football playoff. When you think about the fact they're off this coming week, but they'll be playing at Northwestern. Let me rephrase that. They'll be playing Northwestern at Wrigley Field, and that I would be concerned about, because I think Northwestern they are better than their record. I think they're just tough.
They can muck it up. They can muck it up.
Exactly. And what I've seen so far from Michigan, to your point, Mark, about if I was concerned, is I see the talent. I didn't have the fortune of watching Bryce Underwood in high school like you did. I see that the talent and the potential there, but boy, oh boy, man, like everything that comes off of in terms of his passes, it's like 100. I realize the World Series is concluded, but it's like 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and it's like that to me would be the concern. Is that okay? If you're Northwestern now, again, this falls under the category of easier said than done. You're Northwestern, and you are just selling out against that Michigan running game. Like that's where Northwestern, to your point, okay, like just kind of making it more difficult and the potential for mistakes and frustration. I think Michigan can win, but I just see I'd be concerned about the passing game or the lack thereof that I've seen from Bryce Underwood. The potential is there, but a lot of work needs to be done to improve that Michigan passing game, especially if they are able to get themselves into the college football playoff.
Yeah, and there's no question if Michigan wins out, they're going to be in because they might even if they win out, there's a real chance they'd be in Indianapolis actually. But I think we kind of have to ask ourselves the same question about Michigan that we ask ourselves about Illinois. If Michigan goes 9-3, let's say they lose to Ohio State, it's close, but they lose, and they finish 9-3, I think they'll have a better chance to get in than Illinois just because if for no other reason, Michigan gets more of the benefit of the doubt. We've seen that in the rankings. We've seen that Michigan's getting more of a benefit of the doubt than a Washington or an Iowa or an Illinois throughout the year. For what, is that just past performance helping them out, whatever it might be. Clearly the pollsters like Michigan more. But they would have a very similar problem that Illinois would have at 9-3, which is we understand your losses, so we would understand, Michigan, you lose at Oklahoma. That's a tough one. You lose to Ohio State. No one's going to really blame you for that. You lose at USC, right? So no one's really going to hold that against you, but also those were like the three biggest games on your schedule. Do you have enough quality wins? Now the Washington win is helpful for sure. But I think that's an issue Michigan runs into at 9-3 is just like, okay, yeah, losses are all explainable and understandable. Where are the really good wins? Where are the quality wins on your schedule? And so that'll be interesting to me to see if a 9-3 Michigan could get in. I think they would have a shot, but again, I think we're all going to be arguing these different 9-3 teams. I can feel it in December. There's going to be like 8 of these 9-3 teams, and everyone's going to have their own opinions on them and who should be in and who shouldn't be. It's going to be like 8 9-3 teams for like that 12th spot or something like that, because the other spots are going to be pretty well figured out. And boy, the arguments are going to be intense. Because I just see this trending toward a 9-3 team getting in. But Chip, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are that when it comes to the potential for Illinois to, and not that I'm advocating or pushing for it, I think the potential for Illinois to really, like kind of try to run up the score, especially when they go on the road to Wisconsin, because that Bielema, in terms of just the history there, and you want to talk about those Wisconsin fans, just having to sit there and take that. I just think that that this Illinois team has the ability to put on more of an offensive show with Luke Altmaier and their passing game and their running game. It's not as formidable as Michigan's, but it's effective. I just see Illinois being able to put more points on the board, which might help in a style, in an evaluation, than Michigan. I think Michigan is, you said it a few moments ago. They had their struggles against Purdue. I think they're gonna have to try and figure things out with their passing game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Northwestern makes it difficult for them. Maryland, that they have to play prior to Ohio State. So I could see, Michigan, I could see them winning all of their games up into the Ohio State game, but not necessarily decisively in a manner or fashion comparable to Illinois. That's just my initial thought.
Yeah, that's a good point. Illinois had the better offense this year. Just still, it feels like it played better this past week. The defense there, I've been a little disappointed in, but
sure,
there's going to be a lot of talk about these 9-3 teams, so that'll be interesting. So Indiana takes care of business again. Is this more about Indiana? Was this more about Indiana just continuing to just, put foot to throat?
yes,
or is Maryland just unraveling in front of our eyes, or both?
It is both. It is both. And I'm happy to see that it was just a bad social media post, but somebody yesterday, I freely admit, I'm out. It's the time of year where I usually my Sundays, since my Saturdays are devoted to college football, so my Sundays are devoted to raking up leaves and doing yard work. That I saw somebody had posted something about Mike Laxley being out, and that's been discredited. But it wouldn't surprise me. I would be surprised if Maryland, just because we talked about the talent that's there, that they've recruited, and I realize, hey, it's kind of disappointing. But Maryland might want to kind of think this through, even though I'm not necessarily a big Mike Loxley fan. Do they really want to get into kind of a bidding war? I mean, the logical candidate for me would be obviously like go out and get James Franklin. He used to coach there as an assistant. He's probably familiar with a lot of the talent that's there on the roster. Could maybe salvage, that roster. I don't know, but I don't know if I'm Maryland, do you really want? And I don't think the buyout is cost prohibitive, but I don't know. I just think Maryland, they're starting to unravel. And I said this before. I just think Curt Cignetti, like the foot on the throat, that is definitely the disposition that I perceive of him, is that he really does not care about what it looks like. I mean, he just is pretty much like, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to run you out of your own stadium if I can.
Yeah. Indiana continues to impress me with their ability to show up each and every week. Ohio State, game was a little closer at halftime than maybe the actual play on the field was. That late fumble at the end of the first half really kept Penn State in it, and then they blew their doors off in the second half. And I'm a little surprised at how easily Ohio State has reloaded. I thought for sure they'd lose a regular season game, likely before Michigan. Somewhere along the lines, Julian Sayin would look like he was inexperienced, whatever. Now Julian Sayin's the Heisman front runner, and this defense is just historically good. And I keep watching the supposed contenders in other parts of the country just being totally unimpressed with Georgia, watching these other teams, knowing, Texas A&M's got some flaws too, not being completely sold on Alabama. We've seen Miami fall to the wayside. Can anyone beat Ohio State right now? Other than Michigan, I mean in a playoff scenario, is this team? This team looks like a team that's got an amazing chance of repeating.
Oh, it does. National,
I don't know who's going to beat them.
Right, the national media is starting to pick up on, like you said, Julian Sayin. The fact that Ohio State. I'm not going to be critical or judge about the fact that they have, finally now are starting to kind of do. I'll just call it, Heisman candidate, Heisman candidacies for both Sayin as well as Jeremiah Smith. But I think that they're kind of approaching it like, all right, hey, let's keep our focus on the season and the team goals. And I'm not sure if you've seen it or if any of our viewers saw it, but on the Big Ten Network, Howard Griffith said this team is better than the team that won the national championship last year in terms of, I think, just the cohesiveness of that, not to imply that they weren't close or, that they didn't get along. I think that especially on the defensive side of the ball, when you think about like you said, the personnel losses and just the mere fact that, when Jim Knowles left and Matt Patricia came in, it was not hailed as like, oh, like this is, the greatest thing. And you just hear story after story about how the players on the defensive side of the ball just love playing for Matt Patricia. And I just think that there's something to, just they know that his pedigree and his resume speak for themselves. They know that they are well prepared. To your point about Julian saying, I liked what I thought, was actually, like an impressive part of his arsenal was his mobility, that you always knew that, okay, that he could get out of trouble, but that he was able to kind of, I'll just say, like, elude people, before going down. So traditionally under Ryan Day, the quarterbacks don't run a lot, but it's nice to know that it's there if it needs to be. So yeah, this Ohio State team looks very, very impressive. I think, if anything, the team that might beat them might be, Indiana in the Big Ten championship, and then that might just cause a reshuffling of the college football playoff standings.
They look like the two best teams right now.
Oh yeah.
All Big Ten homerism aside, you can't watch Georgia week in and week out and think that's a team that should scare anybody. As far as like Ohio State's or Indiana's, like, they don't have the dudes they used to have on defense. Their offense is blah. Like, I don't see where I don't see where the fear is if you're Ohio State right now, outside of, we might have to go through Indiana twice. But even then, you can lose the first one. So you really only have to go through them once.
Exactly.
Because that first one's just going to be for the 1 seed probably. But
right.
It's going to be interesting. I don't know. There are some things in the run game Ohio State's got to improve. They've got to be able to consistently run the football better. Like their running game last year down the stretch, once they got into the playoff, was incredible. And Quinshon Judkins, who is proving to be a very good NFL running back too already, his knack to find the ends, it was automatic. If Judkins got the ball inside the 10, it felt inevitable he was going to get across the goal line somehow, some way. Just the toughness and his ability to find the end zone. And they're still looking for that a little bit. But Sayan's a better passer than Will Howard.
Mm-hmm.
The receiving core is somehow better than last year when you factor in Max Clare and the tight ends.
Okay.
I think Carnell Tate's better than Ibuka. And I know how good Ibuka is. I think Carnell Tate's a stud.
Yeah. Oh, without question. I would say
Jeremiah.
Right. I think what has helped is actually just the evolution of Jeremiah Smith, in the sense that, okay, the talent has never been an issue. Is the fact that last year Jeremiah Smith was a revelation to those of us that never saw him play in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, so you have this entire offseason of opposing defensive coordinators, and you're seeing it. Okay, like Penn State, Jim Knowles, like they're doing that. Okay, like we're gonna give some safety help, which means, all right, so you're isolating almost everyone else one-on-one, and Carnell Tate is a beneficiary. Max Clare is a beneficiary. So I think that's where the passing game is better. It's not so much that Carnell Tate or Ibuka, it's like, oh, like, are you saying that you want Tate over Ibuka? It's like, no, that I think last year nobody really knew how good Jeremiah Smith was until the playoff. Texas kind of showed, kind of what they wanted to do. And again, these teams, do you really want to do that? Because what's going to happen is Julian Sayin is smart enough in being able to pick out, all right, where I have single coverage and where I'm going to be able to make a big gain or possibly score a touchdown. He's finding those guys. Mm-hmm. So I think, like you said, Will Howard, great player, but I think Julian Sayin as a passer is certainly superior to what we saw from Will Howard a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, just the ball placement's insane.
Yeah.
But then you've got the defense playing at just an unbelievable level. It feels, it's like one of those Georgia defenses at the beginning of the decade when it's like, how do they have Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and like 2 aliens in the secondary. Like, how is that possible? Like, how do you have Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, Kenyatta Jackson, and Caleb Downs on one defense? And oh, by the way, your corners are really good too. It's astounding how good their defense is from front to back. And I don't think the country is as good. I don't think the national landscape is as difficult as it was last year. I don't think there's a team, put it this way, I don't think there's a team this year as good as, let's take Ohio State out of the mix for a minute. Taking Ohio State out of the mix, I don't think there's a team in college football this year that's better than Texas was last year.
Okay. That's fair.
I don't. Now, the team that I've been talking about for weeks now that I think people are starting to figure it out too, that I think could get to that, and I'm taking Indiana out of this too because everyone knows I'm very sold on Indiana. The team from outside the Big Ten that I think would be scary for everyone is Notre Dame.
Yes.
They have more juice on offense than they've had the last several years. CJ Carr is a much better quarterback than Riley Leonard. Jeremiah Love is the second best offensive player in college football behind Jeremiah Smith. He's far and away the best running back in college football. He can hit a home run. What do you have, like a 90-yard touchdown run again this week? Like every week, it's like he hits one for 70, 80 yards. It's nuts. Their receivers are better. They replaced their NFL tight end with an NFL tight end. My only question has been, okay, Chris Ash, let's get this defense together. Now, the defense looks like it's coming together. Now, it's hard to say definitively because their schedule has also gotten much easier. So we're still like, okay, is the defense figuring it out, or did the schedule get easier? Because you're not playing Miami and Texas A&M anymore, but they did a pretty good job against USC, to an extent. But that's a team, I think, that could theoretically contend and be kind of what Notre Dame and Texas last year were as far as possible competition. But I don't see it in the SEC this year. I certainly don't see it in the ACC or the Big 12. I don't know. I think the path is not as difficult as it was. I don't even think, like, you look at the last year's first round game against Tennessee that Ohio State won handily. I don't think there's a team like that lurking that would scare you in like a second round game, like a 10-2 team that's got like dudes everywhere, like Tennessee had last year, where they, NFL receivers, NFL running back, NFL first round pass rusher. Like, where's that team even? Like, where does that team exist? Maybe Alabama's going to be up there in the top few seeds. So like, where's that depth of, like, other than, again, Notre Dame, of that, like that 10-2, 9 or 10 seed that's going to scare you if you have to end up playing them in the second round? I don't see that. So I don't know. Like, I look at Tennessee this year, I'm like, I don't think the SEC wants Tennessee. Like, that Tennessee team this year isn't nearly as good as last year's Tennessee team.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about Notre Dame, I mean, let's not forget the fact that, yeah, they have 2 losses, but they have those losses are by a combined total of 4 points. Notre Dame, now granted,
and a missed extra point was like
right.
The one, like the A&M game should have went to overtime. That's right. And who knows what happens there.
Exactly. So, you don't know, okay, if Notre Dame would still be, more in the national championship conversation. To your point, I definitely think that they're a team that is going to, be that one of those teams that nobody wants to play in the college football playoff, put that way. I think another team that you reference the ACC, and we'll see where they fall within the initial rankings and all that. And I realize they haven't necessarily looked tremendously impressive, but they still only have 1 loss, and that's Louisville. Louisville, and now granted they lost to Virginia, and we're both of the mindset that, okay, Virginia, their good streak is not going to continue, throughout the remainder of the season. But Louisville, I mean, that could be a team that gets into the ACC championship and we'll see where they wind up ranked. So that's what makes it so interesting, is that, like November now, like when you start to look at the games, like who's going to knock out who, not just within the Big Ten, but around the country. That's what makes it really fun.
Yeah, the ACC is going to be fascinating just to see who comes out of there, because all of a sudden, like if you're Georgia Tech, you're on super thin ice. You have to play Georgia at the end of the year, and then you're going to play, like let's say you play Louisville or something. Like you could lose to Georgia at the end of the year and then have to play Louisville in the ACC championship game, maybe, if you can get there. And then if Louisville beats you, you're out. Like you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And now Louisville's going and everyone else is out. Like it's wild how this could end up. I mean, there's people saying Miami's out with 2 losses. And look, I'm no Miami homer, that's for sure. I still think there's enough chaos left that Miami could go 10-2. And they're going to have that Notre Dame win in their back pocket. Yes, the Florida State wins aren't nearly as good as people thought they were at the beginning of the year. But like they're still going to have a few wins in their back pocket, and that's going to be a much more appealing resume than like Virginia's resume at 10-2. If Miami and Virginia are both 10-2, those are not similar resumes at all.
Right.
Like Miami is clearly the better resume at that point, and clearly better team by the eyeball test. But like, it's going to be weird to see how this all plays out in some of the other conferences where there is so much potential. Like if you look at the Big Ten right now, it's like, okay, like it's like crash course Indiana, Ohio State. Does something happen to throw that off? It's possible, but boy, that looks like that's going to be the matchup. Play that game in every other conference, and you're like, I don't know who's going to play. Which 2 teams are going to play the ACC or SEC or Big 12 championships? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm fairly confident Texas Tech's going to get there in the Big 12. I have no idea who's going to get there in the ACC, and I really don't have much of an idea who's going to get there in the SEC. That's probably going to come down to like 8 million tiebreakers. So it's going to be wild. It's going to be a wild November. Any parting thoughts, Chip? I know we got a little national there, but just because it does impact these other Big Ten teams. And so we're going to be talking a lot about national playoff picture down the stretch here because, again, of the impact on the Big Ten.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, tomorrow, I guess, I don't want to say that people overreact, but, like a word of caution to people is, like if Ohio State is ranked number 2 in the initial college football playoff, that is not any kind of reason to become indignant and outraged, because it is just the initial college football playoff ranking. My expectation is for Ohio State and Indiana to be 1 and 2 in some form or fashion, kind of the way I just described. I think Ohio State will be number 1. And then I won't be surprised if, A&M and Alabama are 3 and 4. And then, later on this week, we can talk about what we saw from the rankings and just kind of get an idea in terms of maybe what the committee, how they're evaluating teams at this point.
Yep. So yeah, we'll be back here Thursday to preview the weekend in the Big Ten. We'll also do, and we may even talk about this. We may even do the show Wednesday just because of the playoff rankings. Mm-hmm. So we'll our next episode will be kind of like a half preview of the upcoming weekend and then half talking about the playoff rankings and what they got right, what they got wrong, where the Big Ten sits, all that good stuff. So we'll have that posted here the next couple of days. But that'll do it for tonight's episode. We appreciate everyone watching and listening. As always, hope you enjoyed the games over the weekend. Thanks for your support. And again, we'll be back here in a couple of days to talk first playoff rankings and previewing Week 11.